The apology came out so softly it almost vanished into the noise of the street, but it landed in his chest like a stone dropped into still water. She stood there beside her wheelchair, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes lowered as if she had already accepted rejection before it arrived. In that single moment, this tired single father saw something painfully familiar in her posture, the look of someone who had learned to brace for disappointment long before it happened. If you believe that kindness still matters, that second chances can change lives, and that small choices can create big miracles, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel, Lonely Dad Strong Heart. Your support helps stories like this reach the hearts that need them most. He was a single dad named Daniel, though few people ever bothered to learn his name anymore. To most of the world, he was just another exhausted man pushing a stroller with one hand and carrying groceries in the other, his eyes always scanning the ground as if he were afraid of tripping over the weight of his own responsibilities. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with a 6-year-old daughter and a life that no longer resembled the future he had planned. Every morning began before sunrise, and every night ended with him calculating bills in his head while pretending to sleep. His heart had become a place of quiet endurance rather than hope. That afternoon, he had stopped by a small community center that hosted weekend events for families. He wasn't there for himself. He was there because his daughter had begged him to come, her small voice filled with excitement at the thought of games, music, and laughter. Daniel had learned long ago that even when his own energy was gone, her joy had to come first. So he went, even though he felt out of place among smiling couples and complete families that reminded him of what he had lost. The woman in the wheelchair was part of a volunteer group helping organize the event. She had kind eyes, the kind that looked like they had cried many tears and survived them. When she realized Daniel and his daughter needed help navigating a crowded area, she rolled closer to assist. But before offering help, she hesitated, as if measuring the distance between hope and rejection. Then came the apology, whispered and fragile, as if her existence itself required permission. Daniel noticed the way her fingers tightened around the wheel rims, the way she seemed to prepare herself for him to pull back or look away. He had seen that same fear in his own reflection during job interviews, school meetings, and nights when loneliness pressed too hard on his chest. Life had taught both of them, in different ways, that the world could be cruel without raising its voice. For a brief second, Daniel felt the old instinct to keep things simple, to avoid emotional complications he didn't have the strength to carry. He was already carrying grief, responsibility, and a child who depended on him for everything. But something deeper stirred inside him, something that hadn't been awake for a long time. It was the memory of how it felt to be seen as a burden rather than a human being. Instead of stepping away, Daniel slowed down. He met her eyes. He noticed the effort it took for her to sit tall, the dignity she held onto despite her vulnerability. He didn't see a wheelchair first. He saw a person trying to protect herself from pain. Daniel's life had been shaped by moments where people chose convenience over compassion. After his wife's death, friends had slowly stopped calling. Invitations faded. Sympathy turned into silence. He had learned that suffering often makes others uncomfortable, and discomfort leads to distance. Standing there, he realized this woman had probably lived her entire life inside that distance. As the afternoon unfolded, something unexpected happened. Daniel stayed, not out of obligation, but out of a quiet decision to be present. He let her help his daughter with a simple game, watching carefully to see if his child would react with confusion or fear. Instead, his daughter smiled easily, accepting help without hesitation, asking innocent questions with curiosity rather than judgment. In that moment, Daniel felt something crack open inside him. Children, he realized, see people before they see limitations. The woman noticed it too. The tension in her shoulders eased just a little. She laughed when Daniel's daughter laughed. For the first time that day, she wasn't apologizing with her eyes. Daniel learned bits and pieces about her life through shared moments rather than spoken words. He saw how carefully she planned her movements, how she conserved energy, how she noticed details others ignored. He saw strength where the world often assumed weakness. And slowly, without fanfare or dramatic gestures, the space between them became warmer. But Daniel's life wasn't suddenly easy because of this connection. When the event ended and reality returned, he still had to rush home to make dinner, help with homework, and collapse into bed with unanswered worries buzzing in his mind. He questioned himself that night, wondering if he had imagined a connection simply because he was lonely. He told himself not to expect anything. Expectation, he had learned, was a dangerous thing. Days passed, then weeks. The memory of her apology lingered with him, not as sadness but as a challenge. He began to notice how often people apologized for existing, at work, in public spaces, even in his own home when he apologized to his daughter for being tired. He started correcting himself, choosing presence over apology. Small changes began to ripple outward. When Daniel returned to the community center the following month, he wasn't sure why he hoped she would be there. But she was. This time, there was no apology. Just a gentle nod of recognition, a shared understanding that something important had already happened between them. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, helping families, sharing smiles, letting trust grow without pressure. The challenges were still real. She faced daily physical limitations and the constant emotional exhaustion of being underestimated. Daniel faced financial stress, emotional burnout, and the fear of letting someone new into a life already filled with fragile pieces. Neither of them was whole. But together, they began to understand that wholeness isn't about perfection, it's about connection. People around them started to notice. Other volunteers saw the way Daniel listened without rushing, the way he adjusted his pace to match hers without making it obvious. They saw how she encouraged his daughter, how she never treated her like a problem to manage but like a person to nurture. Quiet admiration replaced silent judgment. The moment that truly changed everything came on an ordinary afternoon. Daniel's daughter had a school event, one that allowed parents to bring someone who inspired them. Daniel hesitated, knowing how unpredictable the crowd and setting could be. He worried about logistics, about stairs, about making things harder for someone else. But then he remembered that whispered apology and what it represented. He decided that hiding kindness to avoid discomfort was no longer an option. When they arrived together, heads turned. Whispers followed. Daniel felt the old instinct to shield, to retreat. But he stayed. He stood proudly beside her, his daughter holding both their hands, unbothered by the world's expectations. In that room, filled with noise and judgment and curiosity, something quietly powerful happened. People adjusted. Chairs were moved. Paths were cleared. Conversations shifted. Inclusion replaced inconvenience. Daniel realized then that the most radical thing he had done wasn't falling for someone unexpected or opening his heart again. It was choosing not to walk away when it would have been easier. That choice had rewritten not just his story, but hers, and even the stories of those watching. Life didn't transform overnight. There were hard days, misunderstandings, moments of fear. There were days when Daniel's exhaustion returned and days when her body demanded rest and patience. But there was also laughter, shared meals, and the comfort of being understood without explanation. Near the end of that school year, Daniel found himself reflecting on how far he had come. Not in terms of success or stability, but in courage. He had learned that love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers an apology, waiting to see if the world will respond with rejection or grace. If this story is touching your heart right now, if you feel that quiet ache of recognition or hope, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to Lonely Dad's Strong Heart. Your engagement keeps these stories alive and reminds others that they are not alone. Just before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below and tell us, what does kindness mean to you when life is hard? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. In the end, Daniel understood that the woman never needed to apologize for her wheelchair. The world needed to apologize for teaching her that she should. And in choosing to stay, to see, and to care, one single dad with a tired heart proved that sometimes, the smallest acts of humanity can change everything.